Welcome to the third hour of American Agenda. I'm Bob Sellers.
And I'm Heather Childers, and we are now joined by our family of co-hosts, Gunnery Sergeant for the U.S. Marine Corps, Jessie Jane Duff, former senior advisor for the Trump 2020 campaign, Steve Cortez, and member of Project 21 and president of Reaching America, Derrick, Hollie. Welcome to everyone.
All right, the ongoing crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border appears to be getting worse. Some breaking news now from the border. If you take a look at this picture, these are border agents in Texas, which have discovered 20 illegal aliens in this case, including 2 children stuffed under the boards of a flatbed trailer. The ages of the children, 10 years old, 15 years old. Earlier, we spoke to Arizona Representative Andy Biggs, who has been visiting the border with Jim Jordan, the congressman, and other Republican congressmen. Biggs weighing in on the chaos at the southern border, especially addressing drug trafficking.
What's happening in Arizona largely is we're getting the runners. So you get people who surrender in Texas, but in Arizona, you're getting the drug and traffickers, and also those who are trafficking with the high interest individuals. So maybe somebody like we saw in El Centro the other day, 2 people who are on the terrorist watch list. So they're bringing those high value targets in to the country, but they're also bringing in the drugs, the methamphetamine, the fentanyl, the heroin, the cocaine. That's coming in.
All right. Also today, news that Vice President Kamala Harris will travel to Guatemala and Mexico to explore what President Biden calls the root causes of why folks are fleeing from those countries. Let's bring in Steve Cortez. I'll start with you first, Steve. Your thoughts on what's going on here?
Well, look, I think it's important for us foundationally to recognize that this is a created crisis. This isn't just bad luck. It's not happenstance, what's occurring and what's unfolding right now at the border. People respond to incentives, including illegal migrants. And when candidate Joe Biden raised his hand during the campaign and said, we're going to provide you with full taxpayer-funded health care if you come illegally and break and enter into our country, if you trespass into the United States, that's an incredible lure. He went even further as president of the United States, promising full citizenship, full amnesty for those who knowingly break the immigration laws of the United States and determine that they're going to become Americans on their terms rather than by the rules of the United States.
Yeah. Jessie Jane, what's your thought about what's going on down there at the border?
To give people perspective on this, they had 172,000 illegal migrants come over in March. That's the largest number of illegals coming over in 2 decades. 19,000 of those were children, underage minors. And essentially, that is the largest recorded ever. And that's not even counting the over 22,000 that have escaped into the U.S. without even going through the border control process. So this has been created by the Biden-Harris administration. Joe Biden has yet to visit the border. Vice President Harris has yet to visit the border. And this has been imposed by their own policies to stop building the wall, stop the immigration policies of the Trump administration that state you will not come over here. You can wait in Mexico or in a previous country. And the practice that President Trump had put into place of telling the countries you must stop your migration to the U.S. or we will cut off your funding. They've done everything but what is reasonable and ensuring that more people come over. Just look at the Biden T-shirts they are wearing when they come over, and you can connect the dots.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Bob, because we were talking about the vice president specifically not heading down to the border yet, but being put in charge of the problem at our southern border. And the explanation from the Biden administration is that she's instead in charge of high-level diplomatic work for the long term when it comes to securing our southern border. And apparently they don't think actually visiting the border is necessary in order for these high-level diplomatic talks to take place.
Now, you and I were talking about this. I wanted to show folks this. Some House Republicans taking a shot at Vice President Harris and getting a laugh at the same time. Yeah. They put her face, take a look at this, put her face on a milk carton because she's missing at the border. Yeah. Again, she's failed to visit the southern border after being appointed. I've never seen a situation where somebody looks like they didn't want to be appointed, Derrick, or doesn't accept that she has been appointed. Now says she is going to the border, but doesn't tell us when she is. So your thoughts, Derrick?
Well, 2 things. One, she's not just been missing in action on this particular issue. She's been missing in action altogether. And it's not that I'm a fan of this administration. I'm certainly not. However, I've just never seen a vice president who has zero presence. And so, as regarding the border, they first have to admit that there's a problem and there's a crisis, which they have yet to do. And so, until that happens, we're going to continue to see these numbers that Jesse talked about. Again, with 19,000 kids that come across the border last month, who knows what's going to be this month? And at the rate they're going, we're going to be up to 1 million here in the next couple of months of illegal immigrants coming into our country with COVID.
Yeah, it seems, Heather, like there's no solution here.
Right. And they seem to think that the solution is very similar to what President Biden was in charge of when he was vice president. And that is the economics of these Northern Triangle countries, being Guatemala is one of them, which is why she is traveling to Guatemala. And Steve, you and I had talked about this before, what was done under the Trump administration in terms of funding for these countries to try to fix some of the issues in those countries to keep migrants from heading here.
Right. By the way, I think it's important for us to speak about these countries because, of course, so many of these people right now are coming and they are ostensibly seeking asylum. They are ostensibly refugees. But if we look at the reality, they are economic migrants because these countries they're coming from in Central America, yes, they are tough places. Yes, they are violent places. By the way, a lot of Americans live in tough, violent places, but they are not places generally of persecution. These are democracies, imperfect ones, but these are democracies. So the whole idea that they are fleeing persecution in and of itself is a ruse. It's a farce. That is simply not the reality, which is why such a tiny percentage qualify when they actually get adjudicated and show up to court. Such a small percentage end up qualifying for asylum. So they are abusing the generosity of the United States. And I would also add, Heather, doing so with the full cooperation of a lot of leftists from within the United States, a lot of NGOs, a lot of Soros-backed organizations that want open borders. Look, open borders, porous borders are always a terrible idea, but particularly in a time of pandemic and uncertain economic recovery. You know, if I can use an analogy from an airline, it's time to put our own mask on first before trying to help others.
That's right. When they drop down, you know, I was on a plane where that actually happened, Steve.
Wow.
And everybody just kept reading their magazines or what they looked up. It didn't bother them at all, and they didn't put it on. So luckily, it was not really an emergency. So it is an emergency on the border. We'll talk more about that. And coming back with our panel, Black Lives Matter co-founder appears to be spending mystery millions of dollars on luxury homes and who knows what else. But she says anyone raising questions of her being guilty of that is guilty of white terrorism. We'll talk about that coming up on American Legends.